Well, it's a great privilege to be joined by Dr. Henry Cloud today. Dr. Henry, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. We're still locked down over here, as I guess you probably are too. Um, but we're doing okay
Whereabouts are you based at the moment?
in Beverly Hills, California.
Right. So, how many weeks have you been in lockdown now?
I believe we're going on 6 or 7 now.
Okay. And how are you finding it?
Basically, I what would it be? Six weeks, I guess. Yeah. Well, I kind of hate to say this because there is so much, so many people hurting. Obviously, uh, the ones that are sick, the people that have lost people, the people that have lost jobs. I mean, there's so much suffering, right? But me personally, I've had a few friends who did get sick. They've done okay, but actually, even in the midst of this thing, what we found is there are some positive things that are coming out of it. Just for one, the richness of the family time. And we have two daughters that are 17 and 19, and normally, the house is the last place that they want to be, right? Now they're locked up with us, and we've just had such rich family times. I think the other thing is I've been very, very busy, doing a lot of podcasts and webcasts and team meetings with CEOs and leaders. So it's been a high intensity, challenging work time, I think, but there's good parts to that. So I'm okay. I'm okay.
Brilliant. And obviously, your work entails being a global leadership consultant, among a plethora of other things, writer, speaker. But I'd just like us to target the area of leadership for a moment. This pandemic is no respecter of persons. There are people watching from so many different continents and countries, and they are going to be faced with the tension of leading themselves and trying not to be intimidated and frustrated and worried about the future, whilst also perhaps trying to lead other people at the same time. So my question is, how do we lead ourselves internally and then lead others externally at the same time?
Well, it's a good question. It's an important question. I've always kind of uh, what's the right word for this? And not kind of poo-pooed the idea because obviously it's true and obviously it's important. But the concept of leading yourself, really what we're talking about there is there's something wrong with that idea and there's something right with that idea.
Mm.
Okay, the thing that's right about that idea is that self-leadership it's really from a psychologist's perspective, it's about what we call emotional regulation. And so when you're leading yourself, what you're really talking about is that you've got these executive functions of the brain. You got a higher brain and a lower brain. And what we've got to do to lead ourselves well is we got to make sure we're operating out of our higher brain because that's the one that does the leadership tasks. And leadership tasks have to do with, the way I put it, is five simple little buckets: defining the future. What's your desired future state? Where I am now, where do I want to be, tomorrow?
Yeah.
Right? Where do I want to be next week? Where do I want to be after I hang up the phone in this phone call? We got to know where we're headed. I often say, the difference between you and a German Shepherd is the smartest dog, one of the top two or three smartest dogs. I've trained a gazillion of them. I love them. But the difference in a human and a German Shepherd is a German Shepherd just barks, right? They're wired to bark.
Yeah.
But you've never seen one bark and then stop and go, gosh, I wonder if that was helpful. Did I bark at the right time? Did that bark get me closer to where I want to be on Thursday? No, that's something called an observing capacity that we have in our brains that the animal kingdom doesn't. And so the first thing about this self-leadership thing is this emotional regulation and cognitive stuff is you got to get above yourself and stop just barking.
Wow.
You know, right now, every human, especially anxiety times, you default to your last feeling of competency and certainty. Everybody defaults to their strengths, right? The Navy SEALs have a great saying that says, no one rises to a challenge. You fall in a challenge, you fall to your level of training.
Wow, that's gold.
So we're going to fall to our instinctive default patterns. And sometimes our default patterns aren't the best pattern for that situation or that context or that person or whatever we're trying to do. So you got to get above it. So leaders have got to lead yourself. You got to take some time and have a meeting with yourself. Say, where am I? What are the key things and agendas and initiatives that I want to drive forward? It might be with a family, it might be with a team, it might be with customers, it might be with stakeholders, it might be with investors. What are the key things that are requiring my leadership right now? And you get above that. Then you got to figure out, the same way your body leads itself. If I want to walk to the living room, that's my vision. Next thing I do is I engage the talent. My mind says to my legs, okay, I'm going to need a couple of legs and an inner ear to balance me. You've got, second thing is, what talent am I going to need to engage to get this to happen?
Yeah.
So I've got to make sure the first calls I'm making are, who do I need to pull in? Who do I need to connect with? Who do I need to inspire? Who do I need to engage? Who do I need to guide? And am I bringing the right people to the party? Very, very important. Very important. Thirdly, how am I going to get there? Am I going to bounce to the living room? Am I going to ride a scooter? I got to have some sort of a strategy and a plan. Well, I think I'll walk. All right, well, that's a strategy. What's the plan? It's going to take me about 8 steps, about 3 feet long each. And it's going to take me about 30 seconds. And I got a plan that has increments that I can execute. Okay, very, very important, especially in a crisis time. You got to add that structure. And then I got some way of how do I know if I'm getting there? I'm going to measure. My brain's going to notice. If I'm bumping into the wall, what does it do? It measures that and holds me accountable and it fixes it. So in self-leadership, what you got to do is really stop and have a leadership meeting with yourself and then figure those things out. Now, here's why I said that I kind of poo-poo the idea a little bit, because it's the same reason, and I'm not poo-pooing the concept of self-regulation. I spent my entire career getting people to lead themselves better, right, to have more self-control. But here's what's really important. See, we go from leading yourself to leading others. We'll stop for a second. Who's leading you? Good question. I had a call with a leadership group yesterday, and they said, well, leadership is lonely. It's lonely at the top. And I said, stop. If it's lonely at the top, something's wrong with you. Oh. And I understand that the buck stops here, that there will be decision rights on your shoulders, that only you can make that call, and you're the only one that makes it, and it is a heavy burden at the top for some decision rights. But if you are making those decisions in a lonely way, without your board or without your team or without your key advisors or without your coaches, you are operating in a way that God doesn't even operate.
Yeah.
It's not lonely at the top if you talk to God.
So good.
Go to John 17. They've been in the Trinity has been in this room. They're not lonely, pal. I promise you, they're not lonely. And if you are, you're either a dictator or you're afraid to reach out or you've never thought about it. Don't do this thing alone. So that's why I kind of a little bit poo-poo the idea that we can't totally lead ourselves. You got to make sure you're not a closed system. You're opening yourself up. That's kind of where you got to start.
So it's both and as opposed to either or.
It's both and those same kind of things. When you're talking about leading others, part of the problem right now is a leader's got to be a leader, right? You're in a business of some sort, or a ministry of some sort, and there is the enterprise that you're leading, but you've also got to be a psychologist right now. And here's what I mean by that. The people that you're leading are in a crisis mode. We're in a pandemic, okay? And so when people go into, when there's a crisis mode like this, the brain registers that as an error, because you got maps in your brain that normally tell you kind of how to do life and how we do business and all this. Well, now everything has shifted, and everybody's brain that you're leading is activated into crisis mode.
Yeah.
And their brains are saying something's wrong. What you've got to do, because you get, up to a 30 IQ point drop in people's brains when they're in crisis mode. Can you believe that?
No, well, that's crazy.
Yeah. Some of you should be giving people a pay cut because you hired a genius and now you got a dud, right?
Wow,
because their brain. Just kidding. That's a joke. But the point is that when we have, all these stress hormones and people in fight or flight and all this kind of stuff, the brain, your creativity, your problem solving, your impulse control, your emotional regulation, your judgment, your sequencing abilities for releasing resources and activities and energies, all of that begins to shut down if this other system is activated. So a leader has got to be doing things that reboot the system internally for the people they're leading. I'll give you, 3 or 4 things to focus on. Number one, the most powerful one, is connection. When people feel connected with, their stress hormones kind of drop by about 50% just because they feel understood and like their buddies in there with them. Okay. And that's really, really important. I'm on the phone with CEOs all the time. And one of the things you're seeing the best ones do every morning, they'll tell me, well, every morning I'm having an hour-long call with my entire team every morning. And they spend the first part of that kind of processing. So how'd you sleep? How are you feeling? Are you worried? They're kind of processing that. They're getting them a little vulnerable and they're talking about it. And then they're moving into work, but they're staying connected.
Yeah.
And so at the team level, the stakeholder, the organizational level, there's different dosages, obviously, for this. With your team, you want to do it frequently. And then you've got some one-on-ones. Go pursue those people. Make sure they're hearing from you, the people that are your direct reports. And also make sure everybody underneath you is doing that for their people. So connection. The second one is our minds go crazy when we lose structure. And everybody's routines and structure has been blown apart right now. You don't have your normal meetings. You don't have your normal routines. You don't wake up in the morning and go get dressed and go to the, get in your car and drive to the office and walk down the hall and say hi to Susie at the desk and have your regular 10 o'clock, So what you've got to do is it's like kids. If they don't have structure, they go crazy, right? So you've got to come in and you got to start to order things for people. Yeah. And you got to add some structure at this time. And there's got to be some really, really clear meeting times. And you want people kind of reporting you. Tell me the things you're doing and when we're going to do them. And the more order you can create right now in chaos, the more everybody's going to calm down. And some of that, it doesn't mean that you have to be, OCD about this. But you can say, okay, 10 to 12 today is everybody's think time and innovation time, white screen. See, it's unstructured time, but you've structured it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you're going to have some routine stuff that you're building in. Another way you do that is defining people's roles and responsibilities and their priorities. Few priorities right now, just a few. And then define the activities for them, okay? Connection and structure. The third thing is control. Get your team together, write down all the things you can't control, Can't stop the pandemic, can't stop our cash flow of our clients, can't stop our donors don't have any money to donate right now. We can't stop how fast this thing's going to lock down, ended, and worry about all that stuff for about 10 minutes because your brain needs to think about it. If you don't think about it, you're going to think about it 3 a.m. But then hit the buzzer, take that list and say, God, we can't do anything about this. We're surrendering this to you. And now we're going to move over to column 2. And here's the things we do have control over. We can call our clients. We can build the deeper relationships. We can have an innovation brainstorming session about how to offer new things in this time period. We can do all our health practices. There's a lot of things people can focus on. And then you get them focusing on the very specific activities that are going to move the needle. They've got to feel like they're working on something right now that has a result. Okay? Very, very important. So get them doing stuff that you guys have figured out. These are the highest priorities. These are the leading indicators. These are, it's not the scoreboard. It's not what the scales say on my goal of losing weight. It's, am I taking my 45-minute walk today? Am I calling 3 customers? Am I calling 4 donors? Am I writing this copy? So get them doing stuff they can control and have them focus on a daily Matthew 6. What did Jesus say? Don't worry about tomorrow. Today has enough of its own. Get them in the present. And then the last thing is put it in a bigger narrative. A bigger narrative. Okay? This is in a Netflix movie, you got scenes that are in little boxes when you hit pause.
Yeah.
Get a whiteboard. Okay? Put the history of your organization and put first 3 years. We didn't know where the paper clips were going to come from the next day. Then we got a little stable. Then we moved into a second location. Then the financial crisis of 2008 hit and everything dropped out. And then here's where we are now. When we get into a larger narrative, the brain can start to focus on this scene and the activities that are relevant for this scene and not get lost thinking this is the rest of our lives. It's not. It's a moment. Just like the Bible. It's 80,000 stories of floods and earthquakes and parting the Red Sea and slaves in Egypt and all these crises. And God takes them through it and they get to a better place. And your people need to know that.
That's gold. And I think it leads well into my next question. And the thought really is, there are people that are looking at the same situation and they're drawing different conclusions. I listened to something today saying most people are panicking about the stock prices plummeting and share prices going down, whereas others are looking at it thinking, great, what a brilliant opportunity to buy stocks at such a low price. And it's their perspective. So my question is that just an instinct based on all the exposure and encounters you've had with great leaders? Is great leadership an instinct? Or is it something that if we intentionally invest in, we can be great? Or if we don't naturally have that inclination, will we only ever be good?
It is a great question, and the answer is yes. It is. There are some people that how they're raised, temperament. If you go into a nursery with new infants, some of them are just optimistic. They're 1 day old and they're going, da, ba, 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 it's a nice place. And then the one in the cradle next to them is like, and now those are the future attorneys and lawyers of the world. They're already finding out what's wrong and want to go sue. But some of this is kind of temperament and all that. But the second part of that, it is nature and nurture. The second part of this, what you're talking about, is a cognitive set of lack of a better word, optimism versus pessimism, right? And so here's what we know, and please, everybody hear this, because this is a leader's responsibility. You are the steward, as a leader, you are the steward over the thinking styles of your organization, okay? And here's what research has shown over and over and over. We've known this for 5 decades, 4 decades. That's totally changeable. Totally changeable. You know, the Bible says, by the transforming of your mind, you can change from oh gosh, I'm going to eat worms and die, stock prices are down, to a different attitude that is a can do. Here's a great opportunity. Let's go kill it. Kind of, you know, I remember in 08, one of my clients was one of the big Wall Street firms. And in the crash of 08, and the CEO asked me to go, he said, I got 10,000 brokers out there that, you know, they're just dying in a pile and they're getting blamed for this and all of this. And so I flew to 20 cities. I you know, put them all in a room and I interviewed them, got all this data, and we developed a program specifically for this, about how we get them, morph them over from doomsday to opportunity. And I'll give you just one simple example. I was talking to this guy in a big meeting. He was one of the Barron's top 50 types, right? He, you know, high achiever. He said, I've won every award in the industry. He said, I go to the office, I can't pick up the phone. I just stare at my computer. I can't even pick up the phone. I'm paralyzed. I said, why? He said, because all my clients hate me. I said, what do you mean they hate you? They said they think, you know, the market's dropped and they think I'm the one that lost all their money and they hate me. I said, all of your clients hate you? And he goes, yeah, they all hate me. I said, how many do you have? And he said, about 250. I said, how many clients do you think there are in New York City? He said, oh, you know, millions, right? I said, dude, you just won the lottery. He said, what are you talking about? I said, if you got 250 clients that hate you, they're looking for a new broker. All right. And if yours hate you and you didn't cause this, there's 1 million clients out there that hate their guy.
Yes.
You're looking for somebody new. I said, so here's what I want you to do. Next cocktail party you're at, or church gathering, or PTA meeting, or wedding, or reception, whatever, you're standing at the punch bowl. So turn to that person standing next to you and say, so are you happy with the financial results you've been getting this year? And they're going to go, well, no, it's terrible. And then ask them the second question. Well, that's what would you like for me to give you a second opinion? I'll be glad to look at it for you. Guy turns around and has the best year he ever has.
Wow. There we go.
And we see churches doing this right now. We see businesses doing this right now. They're looking at this, and there are some people that are going to come out of the other end of this leapfrogging everybody else because they saw it as an opportunity. You know, I'm a person of faith, and so I love the Bible's illustrations of this. You know, remember when they almost got to the promised land and they send out the 12 spies and they look over into the promised land and 10 of them go, oh crap, look how big the they're so strong, we'll never make it. Oh, it's horrible.
Totally.
10 of them. And then Joshua and Caleb, they look over there and go, oh, we can do this. This is great.
Yeah.
And they did it. So it's all in your head. You know,
Love that.
You said in the world you have tribulation. I think the Greek meaning of that is pandemics, stock crashes, you know, all sorts of bad things happen. He said, but take courage. I've overcome the world. This is a scene in a movie.
So good.
So leaders have got to realize this is a scene. You're the script writer of these characters, and you get to write the script of how's this character going to operate in this scene. Now think about that. Because every scene, the character does something. What do you want your character saying? And where's that going to take the rest of the movie? That's your job right now.
That's such good perspective. John Maxwell said, this time is showing who the true leaders really are, because the way they're responding, reacting, like you said. But oftentimes it's our atmosphere and our environments that can.
Well, actually, when John said it, I think he said it like this. In that.
Good old John Maxwell.
I love
Man, John's a close friend, so
Yeah,
I,
it made a good point, because I think oftentimes the cap, if it's not our mindset, it's the circles in which we find ourselves in. I want to shift gears for a moment, Dr. Cloud, and talk about your concept of necessary endings. I know you've got a book on this, but I love the thought that for us to enter into new seasons, we have to exit out of old seasons. Otherwise, we'll go into new seasons experiencing them like their old seasons. So I'd love you first to share what a necessary ending is. And for some people, as they evolve in this time of lockdown, it might be time for them to let go and say goodbye to some unhealthy relationships, or just reposition them. So I'd love you to share a bit on that.
well, the concept of necessary endings, if you think of the two words, necessary ending. So what that really means is that here's where I am today. And if I know I want to be here tomorrow, then sometimes there are some things that are necessarily have to end if I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
Right. So, excuse me. For example, if you just go back, a handful of years, and you take any kind of intellectual property business, right? Whether it's books, publishing, or music, for example, or, movies and television, right? If you had told me as an author that Borders, the big bookstore chain, we had Barnes and Noble and Borders. If you had told me as an author that Borders would not exist, you said this one day within a year and a half or 2 years or something?
Yeah, 2 years.
I would have said you're crazy. But they didn't get it, apparently, that if the way you're going to reach customers is think they're going to come into bookstores and browse and buy books, because they had created the greatest experience. That was their brand, right?
Yeah.
That business model has got to end if you're going to go forward. You can't take that into the future. It's like phone books.
Yeah.
I'd just like to be selling phone books right now. And what people have to realize, they've got to ask that old question, what business am I in? I'm in the bookstore business. No, you're not. You're in the business of getting content into people's hands so they can use it.
Yeah.
Now, if you recognize that, then some practices have got to end of how you reach customers, how you make sales, how you make them aware, what your talent pool looks like, a bunch of stuff. And so what we don't realize is exactly like Ecclesiastes 3 says, that to everything there is a season and a time appointed under heaven. And there's a time to invest in things and uproot what we've been planted. There's a time to embrace certain things or people, and there's a time to shun from embracing. And so there are some people sometimes that, it's not the right fit, or they're not performing, and it's hard to make that call, but that's a leadership thing you have to do. And sometimes you have to shut stuff down. And sometimes you have to wave the white flag and say, that's over, because it doesn't fit tomorrow, and we're going to lead. And you can't put fresh wine in old wineskins.
So what's the balance, Dr. Cloud, of leading with your head and leading with your heart in those situations? Because I find, if anything, leaders tend to know it's the right time in their head for them to move this person on or reposition them, but in their heart there's something that's not allowing them to make that final decision and execute on it.
Boy, you have hit the nail on the head. I mean, if you talk to any hoarder, you ever talk to a hoarder? You volunteer your time to, hey, I'll come over and I'll help you clean out your garage, right? They go, oh, great. Let's go throw some stuff away. Let's end this stuff. And you walk in there and you pick up this thing and you go, when's the last time you used this? And they go, 20 years. And you go, they make electric ones now. You could get it.
Yeah.
Let's throw this away. And you go to throw it away, And what do? They go, no, no, don't throw that away. And you say, why not? And what do they say? First thing out of their mouth.
Well, I need it. I can't.
I might need that.
Yeah.
I might need that. I can't throw that away. What if I need it? Well, A, you hadn't used it in 20 years. Okay.
So true.
And B, leaders don't think about not doing something because they don't have what they need.
Mm.
They don't do that. Leaders think about where do we need to go? And then they ask the question, what am I going to need to get there? And how am I going to go get it?
So good.
That's a very different way of thinking. I've talked to so many people go, they got a business. Why don't you start that? Well, it takes money to make money. I don't have any money. I'd start a business, but my daddy didn't leave me with anything. And I don't, are you kidding me? No, if you need money to start a business, go find it. There's investors, there's partners, there's 1,000 different ways. But if they have that I might, and that fear of, I can't let go of this, I might need, or some sort of an emotional attachment to it.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I know if you're a church leader and you like choir robes, then put one in your closet and take it out every now and then. But probably that's not where people are today. So you got to, cry about it and move on, except for there are some, that's their mission and that's fine. But if we have emotional attachment to the past,
yeah,
then that's what celebrations are for. That's why we retire people's jerseys. We can celebrate it, but
move on.
You guys are 95 years old right now. You can't still be out on the soccer field, right? It's time to move on.
That's a challenge for people. But on the complete other extreme, if people are wanting to let go of relationships, there'll be another tribe and pool of people that are really focused on instigating new relationships. And I read a great blog post by you on your website, and we'll get more details of that as we come into land. But you talked about the anatomy of trust that's necessary when trying to build new relationships. Could you explain and unpack that anatomy?
Yes, one of the main concepts, I've got an online leadership development platform called Leadership University, and one of the main modules there is the one on trust, and it begins with, and I want you to think about this sentence: trust fuels investment. Trust fuels investment, meaning that if we're going to invest in something, then if you're going to put your money in the bank, you've got to trust that it's going to turn out well, right? Okay. And when we trust, we move towards something. So if you're leading a team, you want your people invested. You don't want one foot in and one foot out. And to do that, they've got to move towards you. Their whole system has got to move towards you and buy in and invest. Your customers have to do that. Your investors have to do that. The regulators have to do that. The industry, you've got to have trust. Now, here's where leaders screw up all the time. They think that trust equals this narrowly defined word, wrongly defined, the way a lot of people use it, of integrity. Yeah. That you trust somebody, well, we're honest, we have integrity. You can believe the numbers and all of that. Okay, that doesn't equal the anatomy of everything that goes in to driving trust. Trust has some components. Certainly, honesty is foundational.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to trust a liar, right? But that ought to be permission to play. You can't even get in the game if you're a liar. But there are a lot of honest people that we don't entrust our time and effort and money to, just because they're not thieves. Trust means, there's some components that load on this. And in Leadership University, I spend a lot of time on all five. But the first one is, they better feel like you understand their needs.
Yes.
We don't trust somebody because they're persuading us into how good they are or right they are. We trust them when they feel like, when we hear from them, that you really get me. You know what's important to me and it matters to you.
Mm.
That's when I start to open up. That's how the hostage negotiators do it when somebody's got a bomb strapped to them. They don't go in and say, dude, this is stupid. Don't blow up this bank. They go in and they say, so, hey, what's your name? Joey. They sent me in here to tell me how did we get here today? Tell me what's going on. And they listen first.
Mm.
The person starts to feel understood, and then they start to build trust. So you got to understand. The second thing is they got to feel like you're for them. You want them to win.
Yeah.
That you're not in it just for your own agenda. What's your motive here? Are you about something bigger than yourself and your own interest? Or do you want them to win? You're going to do everything you can for them to win. The third thing is competency. Can you pull it off? I love somebody who understands me. A surgeon understands me, have a lot of empathy. They're for me. They want me to get well. But if they've never operated on a knee before, I'm not going in that operating room. I got to feel like they know what they're doing. So we have to drive a sense of that they understand the competency. And then there's the character piece as the fourth thing. Do we have the character traits, the compassion and the listening and the courage and the perseverance and the level-headedness and the honesty and all of that? And then the fifth one is a track record. What happened the last time I interacted with you? What happened the last time anybody did? What have you ever, what happened to the last guy you operated on, doctor? Is that the dead body I see out in the waiting room, or is that the guy out there playing tennis? So yeah. We're establishing a track record all the time. So leaders have got to focus on all five of those. And you don't trust somebody until you see those components. Very, very important. You don't just go on, oh, I love this person, let's get married. You got to have some sort of process to figure this out.
What happens if a leader builds those different aspects and then in their humanity they make a mistake? Is it quite easy to build that trust back up, or is it gone in a moment?
Both. It kind of depends on what the betrayal is, and it also depends on how deeply ingrained the pattern of the rich track record is. Yeah. If you go into a meeting, everybody has this experience. You go into a meeting, there's 6 of you, have this Monday morning meeting, and it's 9:00, the start time, and Mary's not there. Okay?
Yeah.
If Mary's not there, everybody goes, has anybody talked to Mary? Is she okay? And we're waiting 5 minutes and Mary's not there. You think somebody call Mary. Now, why do you get worried about Mary? Because Mary's always there.
Yeah, reliable.
This is an anomaly. Okay. You go into another meeting, if Joey's not there and you're waiting a few minutes, now it's 5 minutes after, the leader of the meeting goes, come on, let's get started. No telling when Joey will show up, because Joey's always late, right? So when somebody makes a mistake, what's the pattern? Is this an occurrence, or is this a pattern of a bunch of stuff? That's one of the things that really, really weighs in on it. Sometimes a mistake confirms to people what they already kind of don't feel good about in some way. It kind of validates, I knew it. I never felt there's something, and it validates it. Okay. And so it also depends on the amount of ownership they take, how much they try to play the victim and blame. But it also depends on really what the infraction is. There are things that are a lot easier to get over than other things. And so it's a complicated scenario. I remember one time I was It was an executive team meeting, a big company, and the CFO blew up in a meeting and actually picked up his notebook and threw it at the chairman of the board and said, I'm sick of this, and walked out of the room. Okay. Now, about an hour later, we all reconvene, and the CEO says to me, can you think of any possible scenario by which he gets to stay? I mean, is that recoverable from?
No.
I think in all these scenarios, you're looking at a lot of different factors because they're not all alike.
Yeah.
I've seen other situations where somebody really level-headed and good and everybody loves and they lose it one day and everybody goes, dude, we've all had a bad day. Come on, but let's get over this. So it varies, but we do well to remember trust is like a wall. It's built a brick at a time. But if you hit it with a truck, the whole thing comes tumbling down.
That's gold.
Try to keep from doing that.
I love that. Gosh. Penultimate question.
You know what? I'm an optimistic, redemptive person.
Yeah.
I think that felony murder can turn into a pastor. And I've seen it happen. So I never want to say nobody's irredeemable. That's just not true. Paul murdered Christians. He ended up spreading the gospel across the Roman Empire. So come on, let's always have hope, but don't lay hands on any man too quickly.
That's so balanced and sound. I love that. That's refreshing to hear.
Sorry, my chair's stuck in a hole here. There we go.
Penultimate question, Dr. Cloud. People, companies, leaders, organizations come to you for advice, wisdom, and insight. If our viewers had the opportunity to sit down, have a coffee with you, and there was one theme or one piece of leadership advice that you would focus and target in that conversation, what would it be and why?
Well, other than I hate the question.
Why?
Well, it's a little bit like, okay, I'm going to give you one thing that's important to surviving. And I'm sitting there thinking,
there are three.
I got to choose between water, air, and food.
Yeah, it's not fair. It's not fair. It's a narrow question, but it gives focus.
There are a handful, I would think, that are very, very important. But let's pick one of the handful, if I had to say that.
You've got one theme with subpoints. You've got
one theme with subpoints. Now, put it in a succinct, like, what the question is. I got it this time with leaders, and what's the one thing I want them to think about? Is that the best way to put it?
Yeah, you should be interviewing yourself. That was way better.
Well, no, I kind of get it. It's just hard. I would tell them, look, what you are doing as a leader involves taking people from some current state to another state. It's either a state of satisfaction doing what they're doing, it's either a state of engagement, it's either a plateau to growth, or it may be to a whole nother, morphing this whole organization into something new. But you've got to remember what you're doing as a leader. A manager just manages what is. A leader, you are taking somebody from one state of being to another, okay? So in that sentence, I'm going to cheat here, are two things. You're taking people from here to there. So you better know, and they better know where you're going. And everybody remember that we are going. So it's going to focus on clarity of where we're headed, but making sure you realize you can't go there by yourself.
No.
And if you're not engaging and taking and doing everything that helps the people get there, the people are going to be the ones that are carrying the load. You're not. So it's about where you're going, the clarity of that, and how you're going to get them with you. I cheated. I said two things.
That's fine. It was a perfect answer. It was amazing. All right. Last question, and then love to hear how we can find out more about you, your books, website, etc. What's the one thing? Oh, I'm repeating the same thing as last time. But something we don't know, that we really need to know, that you've learned based on your many years exposed to fantastic leaders.
One thing that I've learned about leaders, that we do not understand the word humility well enough.
That's good.
Because humility, people think self-deprecating, don't draw attention to yourself, all those great things that a third grader knows, all right? But humility, really, in the sense of being a great leader, is that you're sitting in a position of authority. And the difference in a humble leader and a non-humble leader is it's like God. God is omnipotent. Okay? You're potent.
Yeah.
Humility is getting rid of the omnis.
Mm.
God is omniscient, but you've got to be niscient. You got to be knowledgeable. God is omnipresent, but you've got to be present. So when you think of leadership, if you really get in touch with your humility, what that's going to drive you to is a question of, what power do I have from this position to really move the needle? What do I need to know, the niscient part, from this position to really move the needle? Where do I need to be present every day, and how can I drive that presence down my organization to move the needle? And you really get in touch with your finiteness around key leadership like factors that have to be driven, and your finiteness will drive you to multiplying the people below you, because you realize that you are limited, and that's going to drive your time and energy and resources. And the other side of this humility thing is this: you really get it that you don't know everything. So what do you need? You need advisors. With a multitude of counselors, plans succeed, Proverbs says. You really get it that you don't get it right all the time. So you got to confess, and you got to be growing. You really need it that you need to grow. So you subject yourself to coaching and to input. You really need it that you're going to fail. So you got to be pretty good at gaining forgiveness and creating a culture like that. So you can do a whole leadership school basically around what humility really means in making a superstar.
That's so good. True, yeah.
Really important.
Gosh, well, thanks so much for your input and your wisdom. We are a faith-based program, so in a moment we'd love you to pray for our viewers and for their leadership, Dr. Cloud. But before that, could you just let us know how we can find you online? And
yeah, I wanted to give a plug for a couple of things here. One is the leadership concepts I've been talking about. You can find that on, if you go to drcloud.com and look up Leadership University. It's on the homepage if you scroll down. Leadership University, that's an individual program, or you can buy it enterprise-wide. We actually had a company this morning that was talking about 700,000 licenses of individuals. I mean, it can be teams or anything.
Yeah.
So that's Leadership University at drcloud.com. But the other thing is that it is a faith-based audience. So we've just rolled out this thing, actually currently, called Churches That Heal, churchesthatheal.com. And what we're doing there is for about 2 years, we've been working on this program to help come alongside churches and help pastors and churches to meet the needs of the mental health crisis in their community. You got more and more people, depression, anxiety, addictions, burnout, all of that. And it's a very comprehensive program to equip your church to do that. It's cheap, it's scalable, it helps the pastor and the pastoral team get well in whatever they're struggling from. It's community-wide. There's big stuff for the whole town. And then there's also the individual and small group side of it as well. So go to churchesthatheal.com.
Fantastic. And all that information will appear at the end of this episode and at the bottom of your screen now, so you can check that out.
Oh, great. Now, I have a question for you.
Yes.
So I grew up in Mississippi, and I kind of talk like this. And you've got that cool, like, smart person's accent. How do I do that?
Give it a practice. It's all the way you
You sound so much more intelligent than I do. It sounds you're so smart.
Hey, you're the doctor. You're the doctor.
Well, down in Mississippi, we say doctor. You say doctor. So I want to learn how to do that.
Doctor. Wow.
Doctor.
I'll get practicing my Mississippi accent for next time.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been a privilege to have you. Please, could you just quickly pray for us as we come into land, and then I'll let you go back to what you're doing.
Yeah, I will do that. Father, we come before you, our Father who art in heaven. Hallowed be thy name. We begin that way as you taught us to do it. And you are a father, so I ask you for a father's care for everyone listening. We're going through a hard time. We need for you to really, really be present as a father and give us comfort and security and guidance. And you're also in heaven and not on earth, and you sit above this. And we ask you, God, from your role to end this thing, this pandemic, the suffering that's following the pandemic. Whenever we air this program, we're going to be somewhere in it, God. And I just ask you to continue to help the medical providers. We need vaccines and we need medicines, God, but we also need for you to supernaturally just kill this thing and make it die. And we pray for all the leadership struggles that everyone finds themselves in. Give them wisdom and courage. And God, help them to see the opportunities here to morph into new ways of reaching people and helping people. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Cloud. Hope you stay safe and remain sane in lockdown.
And congratulations on that new baby.
Thank you, sir. Speak to you again.
Okay.